London, an April morning. Sunlight streamed through the towering glass panes of the Albion Financial Centre at Canary Wharf, where colossal capital flows coursed across continents like the city's lifeblood. On the 38th floor, the already tense atmosphere of high finance suddenly shifted, an intangible change, like when a queen enters Buckingham Palace. Amara Okafor Beaumont appeared, her hair swept up in an elegant bun, dark eyes polished like obsidian, radiating the quiet authority of a woman who had forced open dozens of doors barred by gender and skin color. A pomegranate-hued Versace suit clung to her slender yet commanding frame, making colleagues, men and women alike, instinctively adjust their ties or posture when her gaze passed them. Amara was 42. 2 decades earlier, she had been just a young African girl from Peckham, lifted by a scholarship into Oxford, and through sheer determination had become a lawyer, then an investor, and ultimately co-founder of Beaumont and Partners, a multi-billion-pound empire. From the very beginning, she was different. While others leaned on family wealth or old networks, she plunged into Mandarin lessons to negotiate directly with Asian investors, spending half a year in Beijing forging ties. That deal was now on the verge of becoming the most significant international contract in the firm's history. As she stepped out of the elevator, Sienna Patel, Edward's assistant, immediately smiled and announced, "The partner from Beijing, Mrs. Beaumont, is already in meeting room A." There was undisguised admiration in Sienna's eyes. Everyone here knew the Beijing deal was Amara's brainchild. Amara nodded lightly, ready to enter, when the elevator chimed again. And then, as if in a carefully staged film scene, Edward Beaumont appeared. At 45, Edward still carried the charm of the man who had once made Amara's heart race at Oxford more than 20 years ago. Tall, with just enough silver in his hair to suggest gravitas, the sharp tailoring of his Tom Ford suit enhanced the aura of a successful man. Yet his eyes, among dozens of employees, settled only on one person, Amara. "There she is, the queen of my life." Edward's voice was loud enough for the entire floor to hear. In 3 long strides, he was at his wife's side, an arm slipping around her waist in a public claim of devotion, before kissing her passionately. A murmur spread through the office, though no one dared look directly. Screens suddenly became captivating. "Edward," Amara laughed softly, her hand pressing against his chest, half pushing, half lingering. "The partners are waiting." "Let them wait 60 seconds, Edward replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "I need to kiss my wife first." In that instant, even after 20 years, Amara's heart skipped a beat. Young employees at the firm often whispered that the Beaumonts were living proof of eternal love. Not only had they built a financial empire from a suburban garage, but they had also preserved their passion as if it were still the beginning. While other power couples collapsed under the weight of wealth and ambition, Amara and Edward had become legend, openly affectionate at the office, traveling together from international summits to church fundraisers, never hiding their devotion. Laughter rippled awkwardly near the elevator. Theo Beaumont, 18, appeared with a sports bag slung casually over his shoulder. He was the perfect blend of his parents. Edward's height and sharp features, Amara's warm eyes and gentle demeanor. In his jacket pocket still lay the acceptance letter for a politics scholarship at UCL, a secret he had not yet shared. Today, he only wanted to see his parents at work. "Oh my God, are you two really staging a romance scene this early in the morning?" Theo shook his head, trying to suppress a grin. Amara drew him into her arms, kissing his forehead. "What are you doing here? Don't you have lacrosse practice?" "I was going to invite Dad to breakfast, but I guess he's too busy." Kissing Mom in public. Theo winked. Edward laughed, clasped his son's hand, and pulled him into a warm embrace. "A wise man knows what comes first. Tonight, the 3 of us will have dinner at Clarence in Mayfair. I booked the table back in January." "You two are unbelievable," Theo muttered, though his eyes sparkled with happiness. Theo's parents' love was a fortress, proving that true love existed. While friends lamented cheating fathers, drunken mothers, or divorces, he only had to open his front door to find his parents still dancing in the kitchen or leaving tender handwritten notes for each other. That evening, at Clarence, Edward had booked the entire restaurant for privacy. Beneath flickering candlelight, he held Amara's hand as they danced, while Theo secretly recorded the moment. "Remember our first dance in that shabby Soho nightclub?" Edward whispered. "Of course I do," Amara laughed. "You stepped on my foot at least 17 times. 18, Edward corrected, spinning her around. "But you still agreed to a second date." They burst into laughter, their voices mingling with jazz music. For Beaumont and Partners clients, they were not just CEOs and co-founders. They were London's love story admired and envied in equal measure. Driving back to their Chelsea estate late that night, Amara rested her head on Edward's shoulder. She thought of the Beijing contract nearing completion, and the surprise she had prepared for him, a house in the Cotswolds, she planned to give him on his next birthday. Their life seemed so perfect, it was almost unreal. "What are you thinking?" Edward asked, squeezing her hand. "About us, about how lucky we are." "Not luck, Amara," he said, kissing her fingers one by one. "It's a choice. For 20 years, every day, I've chosen you. And tomorrow, I'll choose you again." Theo shook his head in mock exasperation from the back seat, though his eyes stung. Somehow, his parents had kept alive a flame many considered a fantasy. Their estate emerged like a jewel in the night, its glowing windows casting a warm shimmer. Amara smiled, tightening her grip on Edward's hand. "Home," Edward said. "Home," she echoed. They had no idea. That fortress, seemingly eternal, would soon begin to crack over nothing more than a single, fragile golden strand of hair. Saturdays usually soften London, even on streets that never sleep. The sky was uncannily clear. Early light poured through the arched glass of the Beaumont's kitchen like a thin river, gliding over the Carrara marble and catching the scent of leeks, celery, and shallots as they surrendered to olive oil in the pan. Amara stirred a pot of jambalaya from her grandmother's recipe, a dish that carried a whole tributary of memory from a cramped Peckham kitchen humming a bar of Stevie Wonder. This music had always been her anchor against the cold numbers of the investment world. Theo had gone to lacrosse practice, and Edward had said he'd be upstairs in the study on the second floor, fixing a few slides for the Beijing deal. That seemingly harmless timetable was the perfect backdrop for a disastrous slip. When the jambalaya reached its point, rice separate and glossy, andouille beading fat, chopped parsley falling like rain, Amara arranged everything on a silver tray. The rice packed into a neat round, encircled by a steaming moat of jambalaya, French bread cut on the bias, butter softened to the exact degree, a glass pitcher of iced tea with a few lemon slices. She smoothed a crease in the napkin, drew a breath as if performing a private rite, and carried the tray upstairs. The study door was ajar, rare for Edward, who demanded absolute privacy when he worked. Inside, a 3-panel curved monitor displayed a presentation file, the words, "Beijing Integration, Final Pass" glowing. The leather chair faced the window. An espresso on the desk had formed a skin. No one there. "Ed?" Amara called, setting the tray on the corner of the desk. Silence. The ensuite bathroom door was closed, but there was no sound of water. He may have gone down for a file, she thought, reaching to gather a scatter of papers, an instinctively Amara thing. Anything askew made her feel as if her mind were untidy. And then she saw it. A Hermes silk scarf draped over the back of the chair like a confession, coral shot with gold, chain and bridal motifs, a variation on brides de gala, unmistakably not one of Amara's. She knew them all, each tied to an occasion, a trip, a promise. This one did not belong to her. Even the scent threaded through the silk was foreign. A sharp, sugary vanilla with synthetic musk, young, loud, the opposite of her own Joe Malone wood sage and sea salt, all dry sea and wild grass, the quiet way she existed in a boardroom. Amara's fingers paused mid-air. Part of her brain, trained by thousands of hours of litigation and negotiation, opened the evidence review file. Object, placement, context, accompanying traces. She lifted the scarf lightly, and in the glossy weave, a blonde hair caught in the seam flashed in the sunday. Long, fine, bright, not hers. Amara had learned to trust the most minor signs in all her years of fighting prejudice. The hair was an oversized letter in a contract, a caveat that would unravel the whole agreement, if ignored. She pinched it between two nails painted claret red and raised it to eye level. It glinted like a thread. A malicious tailor had stitched into a flawless dress, deliberately exposing the seam. In her head, scattered pieces from the past few months slid into place. Edward's late nights with surprise clients, an unfamiliar perfume ghosting his collar, his new habit of taking calls. In the garage, with the ridiculous claim that the signal's better, the weekend conferences that never appeared on the firm's internal calendar. She had never checked because she trusted. And because she trusted, she did not look. A light footfall in the hallway triggered instinct. Amara slipped the hair into the hidden pocket sewn into her dress, a just-in-case habit of a lawyer, and draped the silk back where she'd found it. The door swung open. Edward came in, hair damp, wearing the old Oxford sweatshirt she'd given him one Christmas. "God, what's that smell?" He smiled, brushing a kiss across her cheek. "You're an angel. I haven't eaten all morning. Where were you?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. "I showered." He blinked. "Went for an early run along the embankment, sweated buckets. Wanted to freshen up before I call Beijing." Amara's mouth softened into a small, calm smile as she poured iced tea. She invited him to sit, set the plate before him, and observed while he ate. The same face, the man she had once been sure was her whole life, suddenly an object under a cold microscope, a faint scratch at the neck razor burn, or a small bruise at the hip bone peeking above the waistband gym mishap, or someone's hand. The wedding ring was sitting next to the keyboard instead of on his left ring finger, where it belonged. "Aren't you eating?" Edward looked up between spoonfuls. "I already did," Amara said. "Early start today. You okay? You look different. Probably Beijing." She smiled mildly. "You know me, I don't sleep before a close." Edward exhaled, as if lowering a mountain from his shoulders. "You really are the metronome for my entire life, Amara." She leaned in and touched his collar. That smell. Beneath the familiar body wash was a prickle of cheap vanilla catching in her nose. Another trace, exactly where she needed it. Amara withdrew her hand and half closed her eyes as if basking in a peaceful Saturday moment, while in truth, she was drawing up a plan. The bedroom door clicked shut. The lock's soft cheek was the period at the poem's end. Amara stood before the dressing table mirror and calmly drew the blonde hair from her pocket. She placed it on white paper. The noon light made it shine like a thin blade. On the table stood the wedding photo, the two of them at street, brides, laughing as her veil snagged on the bouquet. The woman in the picture, the girl who believed the city, the man, the future would be hers if she worked hard enough, looked at Amara with sparkling eyes. "You were wrong," Amara told her silently. "You believed labor and love were enough to buy peace." Her phone buzzed. A text from Edward. "Miss you. Movie tonight. You choose even those period dramas that make me cry." Amara looked at the text, then at the hair, and felt something in her fracture but not break. She opened the safe hidden behind the winter coats, the place no one touched, slipped the hair into an acid-free white envelope, noted date, time, location in block letters, and initialed AOB 1132 S2. Evidence must be preserved like a file. No emotion, no conjecture, only facts. From that second, Amara knew she would not do what people usually do. No sobbing, smashing glasses, or screaming. Why? Why is meaningless in a negotiation? She needed where, when, with what, to what extent. She needed the whole picture, the flow of money, everything legally reachable laid to the bone. The pain would be placed in a compartment like that envelope and sealed. She dabbed her eyes dry, she could not say when the tears had started, then typed back. Tonight, the 6-hour Pride and Prejudice. A heart emoji. A role assumed. Returning to the study, she laid a hand on Edward's shoulder and bent to breathe in his hair as she often did. The vanilla was fainter under the conditioner. She smiled. "Don't you dare bail on me tonight." "Bail on you?" Edward laughed, drawing her in. Absurd. She let herself rest in that embrace for 3 heartbeats. 3 heartbeats long enough for her brain to complete the first action list. Edward's wardrobe. Check for recent changes in cologne divided by shampoo labels. Movement logs. Cross-check actual travel with firm calendar. Sienna will accidentally hand over a few printouts. Personal credit card. Joint account. Download data filter hotel divided by restaurant charges at odd hours. Phone. No hacking too risky, but scan for Venmo divided by Monzo traces, if any. Luxury gifts. And direct ship deliveries. Third parties. Private investigator if needed, but later. When Pride and Prejudice reached the lake scene, Edward fell asleep with his head in Amara's lap, his hand unconsciously holding the hem of her dress like he used to in their rented Islington flat. Memories ran back. The instant noodles to save for their first office deposit, the night she pulled an all-nighter to fix a term sheet, the fierce hug on the pavement when a Mayfair fund finally backed them. A whole life. She stroked his hair, her gaze softening until she remembered the foreign hair sealed in its envelope. Her hand stilled. "I love you," Edward murmured, eyes closed. "I know," Amara said. And that, she told herself, would make everything far worse. Monday dawned with Amara awake at 4. London was still in the mist. She stood at the bedroom window, watching headlights draw ribbons along Chelsea Embankment. In the mirror, a 42-year-old woman stared back with eyes unnervingly alert. A part demands rehearsal. She brewed Ethiopian coffee, frothed oat milk, added 2 teaspoons of brown sugar exactly as Edward liked it, and came to bed with a small tray, like the early years. "You made coffee for me." Edward sounded like a young man in love. "You've been so busy you never do this anymore. I realized I've been neglecting us." She set the cup in his hands, kissed his temple. "Nothing matters more than we do." If this were a theater, the audience would have gasped. Edward melted like a cat under a stroke. He pulled her under the covers. "You okay, Amara? You're different." "I had a dream," she said, eyes steady, voice trembling just enough to make the script believable. "I dreamed I lost you." She paused on cue, leaving a space large enough for his imagination to fill. "I'm scared." "Never," he said, squeezing her hand, reciting vows polished smooth by 20 years. "Till death do us part, remember?" "Keep lying," Amara thought. "I'm counting." In the marble-clad bathroom, she invited him to shower, something they hadn't done together since 6 weeks ago. Amara noted mentally, as if tallying data points. Hot water fell like tropical rain. She lathered his back and talked about Singapore and Mumbai, the things he believed were the entirety of life. While he monologued, she sampled traces, a fine red welt at his neck, not a razor, the vanilla still present tenacious bass notes, a small scrape across the back of the hand, not a gym angle, an odd arc. Facts lining up like numbers in a spreadsheet, resolving into a graph. Amara opened Edward's drawer in the dressing room. He usually arranged it himself, and found a new cologne tucked at the back, a brand she'd never seen him use. By the fireplace, Maison Margiela. Warm smoky woods, the kind of easy camouflage laid over something sweet. Nearby, a new shampoo from a luxury hotel line, the kind people lift from the bathroom after a stay. At breakfast, Theo showed up, spooning cereal and eyeing his parents warily. He frowned. "Mum, you and Dad are weird today." "Your mum had a silly dream," Edward answered for her, squeezing his wife's hand, "and realized she needs to love Dad more, right?" "Right." Amara smiled at her son. He would need to know, but not yet. She wouldn't let 18 crash headlong into a wall of truth. She would open a door in that wall when the time was right. At the office, she asked Sienna to print a few internal room schedules, a routine request from a co-founder. On paper, Morrison, 15 Tuesday. But Edward's personal calendar, she glanced when he left his screen open, read Morrison, 15 Wednesday, off. Someone was using Morrison as a blanket. Amara went to the transaction archive and, using joint owner access, downloaded the CSV for Edward's personal credit card. She sent it to her secondary email, and the file was tagged Household, Utilities for cover. On her way back, she paused before the glass, staring at the gleaming antline of Canary Wharf pedestrians. "It's not that I didn't see the traces," she told herself. "I chose not to connect them. Now she would. Amara made a call at noon with sunlight slanting across the conservatories. Not to a lawyer, not to a friend, but to cry. She phoned herself the old self from Peckham and whispered, "Don't react. Design." In the afternoon, she had Sienna book a table at the Wolseley for tomorrow to meet an old friend. No one knew that friend would later lead her to Elena Kostova, a name that would surface only when the file was thick enough for a counterstrike. That night, Pride and Prejudice reached Mr. Darcy's proposal. Edward shifted, pillowing his head on Amara's lap. She let her hand drift into his hair. The vanilla was almost gone, hot water had stripped it, but the sense memory was not. A message lit up his phone, face down on the table. "Miss you already. P." The screen went dark too quickly for her to read the rest. But a single letter was enough. P. Amara looked at Edward, the same man, sleeping with a child's unguarded face. She saw two lives in one body. The husband who had built an empire shoulder to shoulder with her, and the stranger slipping away behind a single initial, P. Cruelly, the human heart has no off switch. Love recedes by millimeters, not by seconds. So she would lock the heart and divert that energy to the mind. When Edward was fully asleep, Amara went to the study and opened her laptop. She downloaded the card CSV she'd sent and loaded it into a secondary Google Sheet. A quick filter surfaced: Corinthia, London, day use, 2 entries, Claridge's foyer, 2 covers, midday, Harry Winston, purchase, Cartier, purchase. She added a notes column, cross-check firm calendar, cross-check Bentley tracker, the garage logged exits divided by entries. At the top, she typed, timeline. Outside, London sang its night noises, the lights on Albert Bridge pulsing like a blink. Amara saved the file, naming it with dry irony, Housekeeping, APR XLSX. She returned to bed and lay a hand on her chest, feeling the metronome's steady beat. Tomorrow, she would run a small experiment, change her perfume, breakfast patterns, and texting cadence to see how the other party shifted when subjected to a new graph. She knew Edward well enough to model his elasticity under pressure. With the smallest error term, the P profile would resolve. Before sleep took her, Amara sent Sienna a line. "Could you drop off hard copies of this week's and last week's meeting schedules tomorrow? Thank you." A smiley. A woman preparing an ordinary dinner, a general advancing her first night. The next morning, a thin envelope lay in the home office drawer, the blonde hair coiled on paper like a small hibernating snake. Amara added, Hermes scarf, coral divided by gold, unknown owner. She placed it beside a note Edward had written by his teacup the night before. "Can't wait for tonight. All my love. E. 2 exhibits, 2 languages, sweet and bitter." She clipped them together. Amara looked at herself in the mirror one last time before leaving the house. The woman looking back no longer had blurred eyes. Behind the soft smile was a thin blade. She said, softly, "Act until acting is no longer necessary." She stepped outside. April air was crisp and dry, last night's rain lingering on the stone steps. London was waking as always. Only Amara with a blonde strand sealed in an envelope was no longer the same. Lunchtime at the Wolseley always moves to its own elegant meter. The clink of cutlery on porcelain like rain, ticking on a zinc roof, the murmured talk of lawyers, journalists, and art collectors, all burnished by chandeliers and walls hung with black and white photographs. Amara arrived 10 minutes early and chose a corner table, back to the wall, with a commanding view of the entrance and the bar habit of someone who had long since learned not to expose her nape, literally or figuratively. She ordered Earl Grey. The bergamot rose, carrying her back to mornings, spent racing deadlines in the old Islington office when life was brutally simple. Either you signed the deal, or you couldn't pay the rent. She inhaled, counted to 3, and let the face of Amara, the happy wife, slide into place like a gold mask fitted by a master. "Sophia?" She smiled as her Oxford friend approached. Sophia, a stand-in name the narrator needn't reveal the real one yet, hugged Amara, the warmth of an old friend nudging the mask a fraction. Only a fraction, Amara told herself. There is no room for softness today. You still look perfectly Beaumont, Sophia teased, polished, sharp, and expensive. Expensive is the one thing that can't buy peace, Amara sipped, letting the line fall lightly, like a piece of jewelry you don't need to flaunt. They spoke for 12 minutes about things anyone might overhear. The new show at Tate Modern, a fresh ESG reporting rule, a fund pivoting to green infrastructure, enough for the surrounding eyes to box them up as two successful women talking shop. Then Amara lowered her voice. I need someone invisible. Sophia understood at once. Kostova, Elena. Not cheap, not loud. Leaves no trace. An ivory card slid into place beneath the edge of a croissant plate. Amara only looked, not touching. Important things should never carry emotional fingerprints. That afternoon, Amara returned to the Albion Financial Center. The glass corridor reflected her like a moving red ribbon. Sienna rose as Amara passed, handing over hard copies of last week's and this week's meeting schedules. I highlighted last-minute changes, as you asked. And, Sienna hesitated twice. Mr. Edward asked to delete a Morrison entry after the meeting ended. It seemed off, so I kept screenshots. Amara paused a beat. You did right. Thank you, Sienna. Behind the gratitude, a fine groove opened in her heart. This young woman, diligent, discerning, could be a proto. Amara from 20 years ago. Women like Sienna might go far if they aren't crushed by the big games of men who mistake themselves for the axis of the universe. We will see you don't get crushed, Amara vowed silently. The door to meeting room A swung open. The execs were waiting. The Beijing brainchild, just shy of fruition, was a newly mounted bridge, needing someone to stand in the middle and steady the crowd. Amara presented like a scalpel. Lucid, not a wasted gesture, not a number out of place. When she finished, the applause rose evenly, like surf. Edward, seated beside her, leaned over and squeezed her hand. You make people believe what they already want to believe, and you turn belief into signatures. Amara smiled. Two perfect machines meshing, two onlookers, the city's divine couple. Only Amara knew the other gear had begun to slip by a millimeter. Out in the hall, Graham Asher fell into step, sharp as a razor, as ever. London ought to put a statue of you at Canary's tip to keep the wind off the market. Don't. Pigeons desecrate statues, Amara replied, drawing a laugh from them both. In the opening, the laughter made. She tossed a baited line. What do you think of a minor update to the firm's voting rules? Subtle. Good governance shouldn't stand still. Graham side-eyed her. Men like him smell change in the molecules. Small, but a long step. Please send me a draft. I like the sort of thing that costs me a little sleep. Amara nodded and moved on, leaving behind a string that wasn't tied yet, had already formed a knot. That evening, the Beaumonts entertained a Zurich investor couple who used Swiss minimalism to sheath an iceberg's hardness. Amara poured wine, talked about the Cotswolds rose garden, listened to their valet climbing tales, and laughed to the calibrated degree warm but never familiar. Edward was a born master of ceremonies. He could make a room burst into laughter with 2 bullet points. The scene was so perfect it backfired. Amara felt her life playing in slow motion, each frame glossy as an advert, and knew that somewhere outside the frame, a phone lit up with the letter P. She did not check Edward's phone. Never. Not because she was above it, but because she refused to be the woman apologizing in court for illegally obtained evidence. Discipline is the only fence that keeps truth upright. Instead, she logged the room's bioelectricity. When Edward's hand went to his pocket, when a thin tear duct hesitation glazed his eye, when his focus slid off the ring on her finger, everything had rhythm. After the guests left, Theo perched on a kitchen stool, gnawing on an apple, watching like a teenage anthropologist. Mum and Dad's performance was ace, but, he searched for a word, overgraded. Like a video with color grading cranked too hard. Are you taking visual arts now? Amara smiled. I'm studying you, Theo said. Light but deep. Are you okay? For a second, Amara almost let herself soften. Almost. She smoothed his hair. I'm doing maths, Theo. A big problem needs many data points. When I have enough, I'll tell you. Do you trust me? I do. He set the apple down. And I already hate this problem. Late. Amara stood before the mirror, removing pins one by one, her hair falling like a lowered curtain. On the desk lay the envelope with the blonde hair and a fresh note. Corinthia, day use, 2 entries, cross-check Bentley plates. She picked up the phone and dialed the number on Elena Kostova's card. Yes? The voice answered on the second ring. Eastern Europe, iron dry, step wind. I need an eye, no trace. Pictures only. Time, place. No phones. No contact with the subject. Cash, split, staged delivery. You've done this before, Elena observed. I've won before. A small laugh. Details? Amara supplied just enough. Hotel name, time window, a person possibly with a name starting with P. Elena paused, as if consulting a mental map of London. 3 days. First drop. Street James's Park, pigeon kiosk, underbench slot. 02. You'll get a picture, a timestamp, and a question. A question? Whether you want the truth that hurts faster or slower. I want the truth that holds up in law. Pace, measured. Understood. Amara hung up. No trembling. Only a cold that ran her spine, no fear. The body switching to combat mode. The next morning, Amara changed the household tempo. She drove Theo to school but stopped by UCL's admissions office to ask about a bursary for students doing community research in Tower Hamlets. This wasn't stagecraft. Amara's ethical core was the lifeline she refused to let the fracture in her marriage sever. Miss Beaumont? The officer peered at the file. Theo's application is powerful. He's proposed a project helping immigrant parents access welfare systems rare for a first year. I'm impressed. Amara smiled. He has his father's grit and his mother's patience for the vulnerable. The words slipped out before she could block them, his father's grit. Suddenly, the phrase was a stone in her mouth. On the way back, she stopped at Claridge's. Not to view the ballroom. To measure the room with her eyes. To imagine traffic flows. Screen placement. Where the shareholders like to sit. Charlotte usually left flank. Graham preferred the back near the bar. Rupert always a touch behind the third column to avoid being pulled to speak. Such things matter like escape maps in a burning building. Amara personally briefed Sir Malcolm Reeves with a black-bound, untitled dossier at the firm. Inside, a timeline. Screenshots of mismatched calendars, a list of notable transactions, and a blank page bearing one line. Proof standard required. Preponderance for civil, beyond a reasonable doubt for criminal. Build both. Sir Malcolm nudged his glasses up, studying Amara as one might a perfectly hewn piece of work. You haven't come to ask what to do. You've come to announce what we will do. Yes, Amara said, and to remind you, not one step over the line. I won't trade ethics for victory. We start here if I have to teach the city that power and integrity can share a sentence. The older man smiled, the smile of someone who has seen too many divorces turn into massacres. I thought you were the sharpest person I'd met. I still underestimated a woman in pain. I'm not in pain, Amara corrected. I'm awake. Afternoon. Elena's first drop arrived. On time. A brown envelope under the bench. Inside, 3 prints and 2 lines of notes. Photo 1. Corinthia lobby, 1421. Edward ahead, white shirt, tie loosened a notch, smile set just so. Behind him, a blonde in a cream dress, sunglasses half a size too large for her face. Note, he checks over his shoulder twice. She touches her hair 3 times. Not the first time. Photo 2. Lift corridor, 1423. Edward's hand at her back, his torso bent. The woman tilts her head, a scorched kiss in a carpeted tunnel, amber lighting making everything look lawful. Photo 3. Exit, 1630. 1. The woman resting her chin on Edward's shoulder, laughing carefree like a second-year student. Note, scarlet nail polish, vanilla trail. Vanilla trail. It was as if someone had annotated the wall in Amara's head these past months. She slid the photos into the black folder not long in view. not long enough for the myocardium to translate them its own way. She texted Elena, "Proceed." The matter moved from suspicion to proof. That evening, Edward came home early with a blush-pink peony bouquet. For the woman who made Beijing melt. Amara said that Beijing melts for profit, setting the flowers in a vase. "And you for?" "For you," he smiled, this time all the way to his eyes. He had these moments when the old husband came back, like a sunbeam through heavy cloud, short, dangerous flashes, because they beckoned forgiveness. Amara reminded herself that forgiveness is a power. Wisdom uses it at the right time. They dined. Edward told the Morrison story as if the client were a difficult foil, making the narrator himself the lovable lead. Amara listened, setting lures. Wednesday is the Morrison day. Edward paused for not quite a second. "Ah, added a little catch-up today. Not worth logging." Amara nodded, topping up the wine. Another data point tagged matches 1421, 1631. She praised her Duc à l'Orange, smiled, and reminded Theo not to leave essays till the last night. Everything is normal enough to fool even fate's dashcam. After dinner, Edward drew Amara into a slow dance in the sitting room. Etta James's At Last spun on the turntable. "You once said you'd believe me even if the whole world blacked out. Do you still keep that promise?" "I keep my promise to myself, Amara." To rest her head on his shoulder and see the light even when someone dimmed the switches. "You talk like you're arguing a case." "Because life is one," she smiled. "And we're two barristers, sometimes on the same side, sometimes not." Edward fell quiet. His fingertips trembled. Amara listened to his heart through the cloth, faster than usual. Fear? Excitement? Simply wine? She didn't guess. She logged it. Late night, the Wolseley, Elena, Corinthia, vanilla circled like a carousel in Amara's mind. She opened her laptop and added 3 rows to the timeline, starred the points that would matter in a deposition, flagged the ones to escalate to Sir Malcolm if the criminal track needed triggering. Then she opened a new file. The Claridge's Playbook. First page. Objectives. Present the truth without inciting hate. No sensationalism. Focus on consequences and responsibility. Protect Theo. Never let him become a tool of reprisal. Remove Edward from the company by a valid vote based on paper, not public shaming. Lead media on corporate ethics. Push back against the great man is innocent culture. Frame it as a lesson in accountability, not a gender drama. Second page. Principles. No depictions of violence or personal degradation. Respect every community mentioned. Avoid stereotyping, especially with a young woman like Poppy. Primary responsibility lies with Edward. Center the system. The environment that lets powerful men treat women as bargaining chips, and a child's loyalty as default. Amara typed fast. The lines looked like internal policy but were her new oath, etched in steel. Message ping. Elena, question delivered. Faster or slower? Amara looked in the mirror. On her face, a flawless, gleaming mask. Behind it, eyes dark as mountain stone. She typed, slower in public, faster in court. As you wish, Elena replied. Amara closed the laptop and stepped onto the balcony. London night breathed the Thames's damp salt into the air. She remembered 20 years ago, the night they signed their first contract. She and Edward had run like children onto Waterloo Bridge, shouting into the wind, "We did it." Then, the world was just the two of them and a blank future with no words yet. Now, that future was crowded with sentences, some fine, some flawed, and a fat marker's streaks that wouldn't scrub out. She touched her throat, feeling the pulse. Still steady, still patient, still hers, unstealable. "Tomorrow we'll smile a touch more," she said softly, as if cueing the actor in the mirror, and hold his hand half a second longer. People confess when they think the script is safe. Wind moved, dark branches sketching veins across the sky. Below, the city kept running. Above, a woman adjusted her mask one last time before bed and decided she would advance one more square on the board tomorrow. Morning. The kitchen was bright. Amara set out something she'd rarely had time for before. A real breakfast, soft, boiled eggs, asparagus, buttered toast, fruit, Edward walked in and stalled. "Trying to make me put on weight?" "I'm reminding you what home is," Amara said, placing the plate before him, her smile editing out any hint of last night. Theo came down, took in the scene, and arched a brow. "You two are trying to look normal to a degree that's not normal." "Eat," Amara laughed, her voice so calm it almost convinced her. She checked the time. 8:52. At 9:15, there would be a chance call from Lady Charlotte Whitfield about voting rules. At 10:30, Eleanor would drop package 2. 13, a short governance huddle with Graham. At 16, she'd send Sir Malcolm the bylaw amendments draft. 19, she'd listen to Edward recount a successful day, nodding at the right moments, smiling at the right jokes, and recording exactly what needed recording. Each minute, a brick. None wasted, no one loses. Before leaving, Amara opened the safe and set the Corinthia print beside the hair envelope. Clipped them. 2 pieces side by side, legally insufficient, humanly more than enough. She closed the safe and turned the key. "Done," she whispered. Not an ending, a finished mask. And she stepped out of the house with a smile bright enough to reassure all of Canary Wharf that everything was fine, because until she chose to remove it, everything would be fine on her terms. The afternoon at St. Paul's School was damp. A London spring shower had just passed, leaving slick pools that caught the light. Theo Beaumont idly tapped a lacrosse ball in his palm, but his mind wasn't on practice. For weeks, he'd watched his mother change. Not the mum's tired after a big deal or mum's swamped with an international conference kind of change. This was different. Eyes too bright, smiles held a beat too long, gestures toward his father with a touch of performance. He wasn't 8 anymore. At 18, with his mother's sharp mind and his father's observational instincts, Theo felt it plainly. Something was wrong. That day, he used a forgotten kit bag as an excuse to head home. Chelsea's Wednesday streets were quiet, trees dripping their dark leaves. He wheeled his bike into the garage and noticed his father's Bentley still there. Odd. Dad had said he was meeting Morrison in Mayfair. Theo went upstairs, meaning to stop by his room, and froze. The study door was ajar. Inside, his mother stood by the desk, phone raised, photographing his father's papers. Her hands were quick, her gaze intent, like an agent gathering a clandestine file. "Mum?" The word slipped out. Amara didn't startle that, more than anything, stunned Theo. She turned, and the gentle smile flicked on like a switch. "You're home early?" "I forgot my kit." He stepped in, eyes on the phone in her hand. "What are you doing?" Amara said, "Your father asked me to send some contracts smoothly. He's gone out with William and needs them urgently." Theo glanced out the window. The Bentley sat in the garage. He bit his lip. "William drove him?" "Yes." Amara came closer and straightened his collar, a gesture from when he was small. "How's the maths project coming?" "Mum." Theo caught her hand and held it. "What's going on?" In Theo's eyes, Amara saw a younger version of herself, a look that refused to gloss truth, even when adults tried to rouge it. She paused for a few seconds. The smile faded. "Not here," she said softly. "Come with me." They sat in Amara's Tesla, heading toward Chelsea Embankment, then along the river road to the old Battersea Pier, where she and Edward had walked as broke students. Now it would stage another kind of drama. They stopped. The Thames wind barreled through. Amara stared straight at the water. Her voice was cold and measured. "Your father has someone else." In that instant, Theo felt the world slide under his feet. "No way," he burst out. "Dad loves you. He loves us. Everyone can see that." "I thought so too." Amara drew a slim envelope from her coat. She opened it, a blonde hair clipped beside 3 photos from the Corinthia. "This is evidence. And there's more." Theo took them, his hand shaking. He stared at his father with his arm around a blonde woman in a hotel corridor. The image hit like a punch to the chest. "I'm going to kill him." Theo's voice was low but hard, more dangerous than a shout. "No." Amara snapped around, eyes blazing. "You will do nothing unless I ask you to. He betrayed you. He betrayed me. He betrayed everything we built. Precisely why we use our minds, not our feelings." Amara gripped her son's shoulders. This isn't just a marriage. It's a hostile transaction. And I need an ally. Theo swallowed. For a moment, he saw his mother not as the woman who held him through fevered nights, but as a commander leading an army. What do you need me to do? You're good with computers. Better than anyone I could hire. I need you to pull everything. Credit cards, hidden transactions, emails, calendars, all of it. I want to know where he goes, with whom, what he pays for, and where he hides it. You know, that's borderline. All accounts are jointly held. Legally, I have standing. I only need you to open the right doors. Theo gave a bitter laugh. You trust me more than you trust Dad. I trust you because you are mine. My blood, my bone. Amara set her hand over his heart. Your father has chosen someone else. I choose you. The words cut across Theo's youth like a blade. He looked up at his mother and saw that the once gentle eyes had the hardness of shattered glass. Fine, he said, but we do it my way. Safe, clean, no trace, and Dad never knows. Amara squeezed his hand. Deal. That night, the glass house in the garden became their base. Theo hauled 3 laptops, spun a VPN chain through 6 countries, and layered firewalls. Amara sat beside him, not as a mother watching a child on a computer, but as a partner tracking project milestones. Start with the personal Amex, Amara prompted. Theo's fingers danced. Data rained down. Within minutes. Corinthia. 3 times. Day use. His voice wavered. Mum. Amara drew a long breath. Note it. Tiffany. Harry Winston. Cartier. Nearly 100 total. Theo glanced at her. Any of this for you? For 6 months, he said we should tighten our belts. Amara's smile was not sorrow, only acid. Here's more. Theo scrolled. Venmo transfers to an account named Poppy Hart. The name flared like red paint on a white wall. Amara closed her eyes. Good. Now we have a name. Theo turned. Eyes kindled. Mum, I hate this. I hate seeing him like this. Amara cupped his nape and pulled him close. I know. But sometimes, son, we have to look straight into the dark to protect the truth. For 3 nights, they worked side by side. Amara printed and filed, annotating in her own hand. Theo recovered deleted emails, Edward's promises to Poppy. Be patient, love, I'll leave Amara. I need to protect the assets first. He's planning to park money in the Caymans, Theo said. Anger and contempt braided in his voice, almost £50 million. Amara took the printout, her mouth tilting into a cold smile. Perfect. If he thinks he can abandon us and retreat with the fortune, he's about to learn what a strategic error looks like. Theo looked at his mother, full of admiration and ache. The woman before him had shifted from warm mother to warrior, and he, though he had never wanted it, had become her ally. What's your endgame, Mum? Amara set the stack down and stared into the dark garden through the glass. 3 months from now is our 20th anniversary. Friends, clients, shareholders, everyone will be there. That night, I dropped the curtain. He loses the company, his reputation, and his son. Theo hesitated. I'll stand with you. Amara turned and embraced him. For the first time, tears rose not from pain, but from the strength of not fighting alone. You're the finest soldier I have, she whispered, and the only reason I don't fall. That night, when Amara returned to the bedroom, Edward was still awake, reading the paper. He looked up and smiled. Out all evening, coaching Theo on university files, Amara said, shrugging off her coat. The kid's anxious. Edward chuckled, believing her at once. He pulled his wife close and kissed her hair. You really are the heart of this family. Amara leaned on his shoulder, hiding her eyes as cold as a blade. This heart still beat, but it was pumping blood into a plan to bring him to his knees. The text arrived on Wednesday morning, as Amara ended a call with the Beijing partners. Sienna set a teacup down and hesitated when Amara's phone lit up. An unknown number. No name. 4 words. I know about you. Amara tapped it open. The line appeared. We should meet. Poppy. She set down her cup, smiling as if she'd just read a harmless morning greeting. Inside, she felt the stillness of a lake struck by a pebble, small ripples, proof of life somewhere, but no storm yet. It was time for the voice to have a face. The lone letter P on her screen now had a full name. Amara replied, Fortnum and Mason, Diamond Jubilee Tea Salon, 14. Come alone. She chose it not for the tea, but for the ritual. At Fortnum and Mason, people don't shout. Silver spoons, starched napkins, and tiered trolleys are excellent bouncers for composure. 2 p.m. London. Like an ivory sheet, angled to the Sunday, Amara was already seated. Back to the wall, eyes on the room. She ordered royal blend, buttered scones, and strawberries halved into a crescent, an arrangement to make everything look like an ordinary afternoon tea. Poppy Hart arrived 10 minutes late. She walked fast, her heels caught between a hurry and a staged nonchalance. Hair a promise of sleek gold, cream tweed dress, a Chanel classic swinging. Amara clocked the cereal at once, the very model Edward had bought. Not for her. Mrs. Beaumont. Poppy pulled out a chair without waiting. Thank you for agreeing. Miss Hart. Amara's voice was soft. Call me Amara. A flicker of confusion crossed Poppy's eyes. She had braced for a cold battle line easier to handle than a gentle tone. The young prepare shields. They rarely prepare mirrors. I don't want, Poppy began, voice catching. I don't want to hurt anyone. It all changed. Edward, he said, that he'll leave me, Amara finished. When the time is right, after protecting assets, after Theo, is settled at university. Colour drained from Poppy's face, leaving her skin pale as undyed thread. He did say that. He said we are the future, that you were... She stopped, afraid to say the past. Amara poured tea, hand steady. Bergamot rose, as if a sliver of sun had been shaved into water. Miss Hart, I didn't invite you to put you on trial. I invited you to build a reality between the fairy tales you've been told. Poppy leaned in, gripping the table's edge. I'm not the wicked girl in a storybook. I work hard. From Derbyshire to London, I did everything myself. No wealthy family, no patron. I started in a tiny showroom, handed out flyers, and ran social media unpaid. She inhaled. People think I'm a gold digger. I don't want to pick between rent and dinner. Derbyshire. The word pressed a soft button in Amara's mind like Longbourn from the adaptation she'd watched the other night. Certain places are a story by themselves. I don't see you as wicked, Amara said. I see power as the most dangerous storyteller in this room. And Edward has always known how to tell the story people want to believe. Poppy bit her lip. He's different from the men I've met. He remembers the day I said I loved peonies, that I drink oat lattes, my shoe size. Amara said he remembered my wrist size when he ordered my first Cartier bracelet, as if he were sharing a wry anecdote, and that I like chilled Riesling when I'm tired. Remembering is a high-yield investment skill. People feel seen, and then they give more. More trust. More time. Sometimes their self-respect. The cake trolley passed. The server asked about more clotted cream. Amara nodded and thanked him with her eyes. The ritual continued, as it had for 30 years, orderly, courteous, amid quiet conquests. I love him, Poppy said, eyes wet, and I think he loves me. He says you're intense and busy and like controlling and everything. With me, he gets to be himself, not a CEO. Amara let the word control pass. It so often blurs responsibility into oppression, especially when applied to successful black women. She'd heard it too many times, strong as a double-edged compliment, part praise, part subtraction of humanity. Poppy, she used the name, dropping the miss like stepping over a chalk line. How old are you? 28. The age of the other women before you. Poppy flinched. Other? Amara scrolled a few images on her phone, not private ones, but event photos. A different blonde at a 2019 brand launch, an interior designer with a stiff smile at a 2016 vernissage, a PR assistant at a 2014 charity gala. Patterns, Poppy. Powerful men sometimes keep a low-risk portfolio. Younger, admiring, and easy to feel redeemed by. They say the same lines, give the same gifts, make the same promises. Sometimes they even believe themselves until reality calls the debt. You're saying I'm not special. I'm saying all women are special in our own ways. The script isn't. If you place your heart in the hands of a man who recycles scripts, it will wear down like a pebble forgotten in a coat pocket, polished smooth and lighter each day. Poppy went quiet, her thin hands cupped together, as if to hold something slipping. I didn't know, she whispered. I thought love was courage, going against the grain if it's the right person. Love is courage, Amara nodded. But courage isn't blindness. You have the right to choose someone worthy of your courage. Admitting I was wrong is courage, too. Poppy looked up. Why are you? Kind. You could slap me. Or send a lawyer. Because I'm not fighting you, Amara answered, and her shoulders lightened a little because the answer came so naturally. My enemy is the system that taught men like Edward that choosing is a birthright and accountability is optional. And Edward, the grown man who knows consequences, decided to harm. I will make him pay in full. I want you out while there's still time. Poppy's eyes shone. What do you want me to do? Leave the Corinthia, Amara said plainly. Don't let him pay your rent. Don't accept gifts that are not in your name or have fuzzy receipts. Write everything down, and if he forces your silence, remember, silence enriches the powerful and impoverishes the powerless. If that day comes, I won't be on his side. You'll help me? I'll help the truth, Amara corrected, and any child dragged in by accident. As for you chose, you knew he had a wife. We're all adults. A little later, Amara stood. She left money for the tea poppies share too. I won't contact you. Your road is yours. But in 3 weeks, avoid the Claridge's night if you're still where you are. Consider it. A big lesson you don't want a front row seat for. Poppy nodded, the look of someone on the verge of tears at the till, determined to hold them. As Amara turned to go, she called out, He said he's afraid of you, that away from you, he lives. With you, he's measured. Amara glanced back, a smile thin as a blade. Measurement makes people grow. If someone only wants to feel alive without being measured, they end up like a balloon. And balloons are designed to burst. Elena sent a report the next morning. Poppy had shifted from the Corinthia's main lobby to the side entrance. She looks shaken, the note read. By afternoon, Poppy texted offbeat. He says you're just a duty. But I don't want to be the reason anyone hurts. Amara did not reply. She had said enough, but swimmers between shores can't tread water forever. For a week, Poppy drifted like a boat without a compass. She appeared at Beaumont and Partners at lunchtime, standing in the lobby by a marble column, eyes fixed on the elevators as if waiting for a star. Per Amara's quiet instruction, security escorted her out respectfully, handing her the legal department's card instead of making a scene. Friday night, Poppy emailed Edward at length. The sentences shattered like crystals. You told me to be patient. I was. You told me to believe. I did. You said I was the future. I made my future small enough to fit your briefcase. I don't know who I am anymore, staring into a hotel mirror. At the end was a line for Amara that Poppy would never send. I wish I'd met you before I met him. Elena pinged. She went to Lady Charlotte's luncheon, sat 2 tables away, left without speaking. Amara smiled faintly. Poppy was looking for a mother or a judge. At those parties, alas, all you get is an audience. While Poppy wavered, Amara tightened the ring. She met Lady Charlotte Whitfield in a conservatory room thick with orchids. Charlotte, long inured to scandal since the 80 seconds, poured Darjeeling and spoke plainly. I'm old, Amara. I can smell the mess from the glass placement. When men are hiding, they set it slightly left. Edward did that last night at the Arts Club. Thank you for observing, Amara said, laying down a slim folder. I need your proxy at Claridge's tonight, and a seat close to the tech desk. Charlotte arched a brow. What are you planning, young queen? Not a smash, Amara said, watching orchid petals open. An unfastening. Charlotte chuckled, put on her glasses, and signed the proxy like a postcard. I want the front row. And if there's fireworks, pick a kind that won't dirty my ermine. At the same time, Graham Asher sat with Amara behind a small St. James's bar. He nodded. Bylaw tweak to re-elect the chair framed like this. It can pass. But we need Rupert. He's hated Edward ever since Edward called him overweight in front of the board. He'll handle Rupert. Amara smiled. And the moral front? Graham lowered his voice. The media will love a queen's revenge. I'm not avenging, Amara said, level. I'm correcting the trajectory. From now on, this company won't trade integrity for profit. Graham studied her for a long beat. Good. I hate executions. I like good surgery. 2 weeks after tea, Poppy texted out of the blue. Can we meet again? This time, Amara chose Green Park, a bench under chestnuts. No tea, no metaphors, just sky and sunlight coin-dropping through leaves. I've left the Corinthia, Poppy began. I'm at a friend's place. I refused the BMW, which he said was for work. He got angry, called me ungrateful, then apologized. Then I was angry again, then sorry again. Hesitation is a self-rescue signal, Amara said. Controllers want you still inside the circle they draw. When you move, they panic. They rename you ungrateful, difficult, oversensitive to pull you back. Poppy fell silent, then whispered, If I speak publicly, what will they call me? Depends on the day, Amara said evenly. Homewrecker, gold digger, family destroyer. On another day, when the wind shifts, you'll be a victim of power. You can't control the crowd's lexicon. You can control your truth. My truth is, I chose wrong. Poppy drew breath. But I don't want anyone else to repeat it. She met Amara's eyes. I won't go to Claridge's. I don't want to watch you. Do what you're going to do. But if needed, I'll confirm. Amara nodded. Thank you. And get a checkup. Cheap sweetness clings to people's necks for a long time. Poppy laughed through tears. You talk like you've measured sense your whole life. I've measured consequences my whole life. They parted like strangers who had chatted about the weather. But as Amara walked away, Poppy called, Amara, are you happy? The question landed in the tender spot. Amara turned, letting her smile lag a beat. Yes, because I no longer let others define happiness through my silence. Late that evening, Edward came into the bedroom, unusually radiant. I was thinking. He produced a velvet box, a necklace for the Claridge's night. Let all of London see how loved you are. Amara touched the diamond like the surface of an ice block fetched from the future. Beautiful, she said, not mentioning whose neck had worn it before. Edward embraced her by the fireplace, straining to mask the dying vanilla. I've been thinking about our 20 years. I feel I owe you. You owe the truth, Amara murmured, tucking her chin against his shoulder to hide her eyes. And I'll collect on time. Poppy vanished from Alina's line of sight in the days that followed. There is no side entrance at the Corinthia, and taxis are idling near the back door of Beaumont and Partners. Silence is a safe signal and an unknown. Until a Monday morning, the board received a group email from Poppy. Heart at. Subject. Regarding Mr. Edward Beaumont. The body was messy, feeling over logic. He promised. The firm would be leaner without certain influences. He asked me to keep quiet. I don't want to sabotage, but truth needs room. Attached, a few blurry photos, and a Claridge's foyer noon receipt for 2. Graham forwarded it to Amara with a short line. Storms early. All good? Amara answered evenly. All good. The pattern shows. Then she called Sir Malcolm. Trigger the ethics plan. Internal notice on personal relationship policy. No names. Emphasize conflicts of interest. As for that email, acknowledge receipt, file it, no public response. She hung up, a weight settling like someone had slipped a stone into her pocket. On the board, Poppy's move had exposed the king too soon, 1 beat ahead of schedule, but Amara had learned the courtroom's prime virtue. Adjustment. She texted Poppy a single line. Don't send anything else. Keep yourself safe. Let the law speak. Poppy replied with a small heart and fell silent. That night, Theo entered his mother's study and placed a new file before her. Dad's messages with Poppy, recovered from the deleted folder, he said, voice flat as the desk. He promises Miami, a do-over, being a father the right way. He swallowed. I thought I was the right way. Amara squeezed his hand. You're the only right way I know. Do you think we're going too far? Theo asked quietly. I look at Poppy, and I both hate and pity her. She knew he was married, but she got pulled in. The system, like you said. Amara leaned back, eyes tracing the ceiling. Honestly? Some nights I think, what if we stop? Some days, I want to hold Poppy the way I would keep my 19-year-old self, who believed love would self-correct a man. But every time, I remember the hidden ledgers and your face when you first saw the Corinthia photos. Systems change when someone stands up and redraws the map. I'm drawing not just for me. Theo nodded, gaze dipping, then brightening again. Then let's draw it well, Mum. No smearing, no varnishing. True proportions. Amara smiled. True proportions and true timing. She closed the file. Inside, Poppy Hart sat in a web of lines labeled promises, gifts, calendars, accounts. In the corner, Amara penciled. No demeaning, no absolving. Put in the right place. Outside, London night lit up like a vascular map. Inside, mother and son met each other's eyes. Knowing Poppy's silhouette, both risk and reminder, had pushed the story to maturity. The rest would play out at Claridge's, where no more blonde hairs would be caught in silk, only lights and truth projected across the ceiling. Amara blew out the candle on her desk. Enough for today, she said. Tomorrow, we measure again. And as darkness settled, the safe's lock chimed a crisp THK. Inside, the envelope with the blonde hair lay beside the Corinthia photos, the emails, the shareholder proxies. The fragments, no longer hints, were becoming a verdict. The 40th floor boardroom at the Albion Financial Centre gleamed on Tuesday morning like a scalpel. Files lay in precise stacks on the 12-meter walnut table. Crystal water glasses flashed under the lights. At the head of the table, Edward was in full flow. 18% growth this quarter. Singapore beat its target. We've proven it. Beaumont and Partners leads, regardless of the global volatility. Polite applause. Amara sat to his right, composed, tapping a Mont Blanc in an even rhythm like a hidden conductor. Her glance skimmed the table. Graham's slight nod with you. Charlotte tapped 2 fingernails present. Rupert sat still, but his eyes were on her, not Edward. Enough to know the underground front had shifted. When Edward sat down, Amara leaned in, voice clear and firm. I propose a minor adjustment to the firm's bylaws. Some voting provisions are dated. Updating them will ensure transparency and modern governance. Edward flicked a hand, half smile, half dismissal. Leave the minutiae to you then. Everyone knows you're the legal brain here. A compliment that slipped on its own oil. Shareholders exchanged looks. They'd long disliked how Edward sidelined Amara's contributions. She marked it with a tiny stroke in her notebook this time. He sinks himself. At noon, in a small bar in Street James's, Amara met Graham. Between them, the bylaw draft rested in a leather folder. Graham turned pages slowly, mouth quirking. Neat work. One line, yet it tilts the balance. If Rupert's with you, plus Charlotte's proxy, you hold 51. I don't want to, Amara corrected, eyes steady. I want to protect. Call it what you like as long as you're ready. He closed the file. But remember, when you put a knife on the table, people expect you to use it. Amara sipped her white wine. I'll put it down at the right time. And not on myself. That afternoon, Elena left the 3rd package at the Green Park drop. Inside, photos of Edward and Poppy at Claridge's quick kiss in a corridor, hand in hand into a taxi. Also, transfer statements from Clark Innovations Limited, a Delaware shell, fed from Cayman, paying a Shoreditch flat lease. Amara drew a red line. Asset hiding fraud. The evidence was no longer romance. It was a financial felony. That evening, Edward came home late with peonies. Thought of you all day, he said, laying them down. "Next week at Claridge's, I want you to shine." Amara smiled and straightened his tie. "I will." And in her head, she added a line to the playbook. Let him build the stage himself. 3 days later, Amara met Rupert at his Mayfair gallery. A collector by nature, he'd never forgiven Edward for calling him overweight in last year's meeting. Amara walked in and chose precisely the painting Edward had once mocked a blue-grey abstraction. "It reminds me of the North Sea," she said. "Cold, wild, but you'll see whales if you know the channels." Rupert laughed, eyes lighting. "Few people get that." "As few understand the value of the small shareholder," Amara said gently. "Few doesn't mean unimportant." A week later, Rupert emailed, "Proxy, yours." The balance tipped. In the glass house, Theo rolled out the strategy map. "You've got Charlotte, Graham, Rupert," he said. "We've got the majority with your shares, marked in red. Problem: Dad will smell it before Claridge's. He's not stupid." "True," Amara nodded. "So we let him feel safe." "An arrogant man always underestimates other people's prep." Theo looked at her, voice low. "Mum, do you ever feel sorry for him?" Amara was quiet for a moment, her gaze far away. "Yes, but pity isn't pardon. Justice needs to be cold." Friday, Amara met Sir Malcolm. He slid a thick file across. "Divorce, asset division, fraud allegations. All ready. Just your signature. We wait for Claridge's," Amara said. "I want the whole firm to witness who truly built this empire." Malcolm nodded, a flicker of pride in old eyes. "You're rewriting a chapter of the city." "No," Amara said softly. "I'm reclaiming what's mine." That night, with Edward asleep beside her, Amara opened the safe and ordered the pieces. The blonde hair, the Corinthia photos, the Claridge's photos, the Cayman transfers, the shareholder proxies. Each lay in place like a chessman poised for the decisive move. She shut the safe. The lock clicked, clean and final. The woman smiled faintly in the mirror, but in her eyes something glinted that was no longer anger or pain. It was the quiet power of someone who knows she is about to win. On Saturday morning, London sky lay in a thin grey veil like silk. Amara slipped on a trench coat and opened the calendar on her phone. Edward Boston Conference. A lie with poor imagination. Elena had already marked in the timeline folder. Bentley departs 12 heads, M40 destination, Cotswolds. "Where are we going today, Mum?" Theo stood in the doorway, backpack on his shoulder. "Home," Amara said, locking the safe. "A house I haven't gone into for a long time." The road into the Cotswolds ran past pale green fields and dry stone walls stacked by hand, since before anyone's great-grandfather was born. Every honeystone cottage looked like it had walked out of a postcard. The Beaumont's estate tucked itself into a slope, slate roof silvered, white-painted wooden windows. When they first bought it, Edward had said, "This is where we'll grow old together." Back then, Amara believed him. Elena had left binoculars and a telephoto camera in the boot of a rented Range Rover. "Leave no trace, no phone photos," the note reminded. Amara and Theo parked 200 meters from the gate and slipped down a footpath to the slope behind the garden. From here, the white-painted gazebo appeared amid the rose beds, where they'd celebrated their 15th anniversary. "You okay?" Amara asked, handing Theo the binoculars. "I'm okay," he said, though his hands trembled. "I'll be better once I have data." 12:58, the Bentley purred through the elms. The automatic gate opened. Edward drove in. He got out first, straightened his jacket, and looked up at the house like a young lord presenting his estate to a favored guest. Then he came around to open the passenger door. Poppy stepped out. Linen dress, colored yoke color, wide-brimmed hat, espadrilles, a carefully curated cottagecore to mix with English country without catching mud. "Jesus," Theo whispered, squeezing the binoculars until his fingertips went white. "They're going into our house." "Home," one word, sounding like a shard of glass mixed in. Amara didn't look at Theo. She pinned her gaze to the two small figures below. Edward opened the door and guided Poppy over the threshold. The woman looked up, mouthed, "Wow," and swayed with delight. He said something. She laughed. His hand settled at her back, naturally, familiar. Cold moved from Amara's nape down her spine. Somewhere in memory, an old Amara stood under this roof with flour on her hands, laughing because the first loaf had risen exactly as the book said. The same man had wrapped his arms around her from behind and said, "If I had to choose again from the start, I'd still choose you." That sentence turned into a nail dropping on stone clink, and silence. "Take the shots," Amara said, even. Theo set the telly on the tripod and focused. He'd shot landscapes before. He'd never imagined shooting a landscape of betrayal. The first frames captured. Poppy perched on the window ledge, reading a brochure about the estate. Edward by the kitchen island where Amara once taught Theo to separate yolks and whites. Then both of them out in the garden, arms twined like a brochure couple on a spa weekend. Poppy ran to the gazebo and twirled, her dress ballooning like a cloud. "Enough, Mum?" Theo's voice was thin. His face had gone chalk. White. "Not yet," Amara said, eyes never leaving them. They walked down to the lake's sand, where Theo learned to swim at 7. Poppy slipped off her shoes, bare feet to the water's rim. Edward crouched to retie her strap and kissed her ankle. A detail, too. Intimate. The shutter drummed 3 beats. Click, click, click. "Dad's a stage animal," Theo rasped. "Every gesture feels pre-written. Every stage has a backstage," Amara said, pulling out a small notebook. "There's no spotlight there. That's where the real shows." At 14:46, they entered the gazebo. Wind lifted the lace curtains. Silver ribbons from their 15th still hung along the timbered ceiling. Amara remembered clearly. Theo had held a mic and read a silly poem. Edward laughed with tears in his eyes and hugged her amid applause. Another woman sat in Amara's chair and lay her head on Edward's shoulder. She said something. He laughed the laugh that had once braided comfort with joy for Amara. Theo pulled his eye from the viewfinder, gulped air, and vomited. He sank, bracing himself over the lavender. Amara rushed to him, supporting his neck. "Sorry," Theo panted. I thought I was tougher than this." "You're not stone," Amara said, handing him water. "You're human. Humans hurt." He nodded, tears mixing with sweat. That scene struck Amara harder than any image below. Her child, the child raised to believe love was genuine, was learning his first lesson in fracture, a lesson no decent adult should let a child know so early. "Let's go, Mum," Theo said, wiping his face. "I've got enough." He tapped the memory card more than enough. Amara looked down one last time. Poppy rested her head on Edward's shoulder. His hand reached out and took hers. A ring flashed on his finger, the wedding band. Amara gave a dry, soundless laugh. "Let's go," she said. They drove without music. No one spoke. On a quiet stretch, Theo abruptly pulled over and cut the engine. He rested his forehead on the wheel, breathing like a runner after a distance. "I hate him, Mum," he said without looking up. "I hate how he smiles like everything is art. I hate that he turned our house into a stage for a cheap story." Amara laid a hand between his shoulder blades. "You're allowed to hate, but don't let it corrode the best part of you. We'll use it as fuel not to burn a forest, but to fire a furnace." Theo barked a laugh that scraped his dry throat. "You're such a lawyer. Turn everything into a metaphor." "Metaphor keeps us from shattering," Amara smiled. "When you put pain into an image, it has a shape, a boundary. And what has a boundary can be managed." "What did you see down there?" Theo asked. Steadier now. Amara looked into the distance. An old script. A man who thinks he has the right to play the lead on every stage. A young woman who thinks love equals being chosen. She shrinks herself to fit the frame of someone's hands, and a house, my house, used as a prop. "So what do? We repossess the stage," Amara said. "We reset the backdrop, flood the lights, and read the proper script truth." Sunday morning, Edward texted, "Boston's dull. Miss you. Miss home." Amara stared at the word home and almost laughed. She sent a rose emoji. In the Cotswolds, the roses still swayed. Flowers aren't to blame. They bloom even when used as a backdrop for lies. That afternoon, Amara volunteered. "Let's go down to the Cotswolds next weekend, the 3 of us. It's been a while since we planted anything new. Perfect. Edward replied too quickly. Let me check my schedule. The typing ellipsis appeared. Vanished. Appeared. Vanished. I can cancel one thing. For you, my queen. Amara hearted it and opened the playbook. New section. Decontaminate. Contents. Clear the house. Change sheets. Replace duvets. Launder curtains. Book a deep clean under the pretext of pollen allergies. Schedule it precisely when Edward says he'll be out for a run by the lake. Inject randomness into the places he likes to repeat. Next, replant. Not the classic roses heavy with old memories, but David Austin climbers in plum. A variety whose bloom throws a deep, tenacious fragrance. Not cheap, sweet vanilla. A small choice. A statement of the house's new scent. You're going to purge the house? Theo asked, reading the plan. No, Amara smiled. I'm returning the house to what belongs to us. The following weekend, the three of them drove to the Cotswolds. A deep clean crew was already waiting. The smell of disinfectant crowded the air. Sheets stripped, curtains down. A worker raised the windows to let the wind in. Edward frowned. We haven't left the place this messy in ages. Your pollen allergy's getting worse, Amara said gently. I want the house as clean as possible. The mess snipped all the intimate beats Edward had scripted. He couldn't ping Poppy to swing by for 15 as usual. The place was swarming with tradesmen. Amara set a pot of mint tea and biscuits on the kitchen island, Theo's childhood favorite, family displacing another family. In the afternoon, they went to the garden. Amara dug holes. Theo teased roots free. Mother and son planted roses. The soil was damp, the smell of loam mixing with the scent of hands. Edward watched for a while, then took a spade. I'm clumsy, he said, a bit sheepish. Clumsy is fine, Amara said, as long as it's real. She saw Edward look at her for a long moment from the corner of her eye. For a beat, his gaze was that of the man under the gazebo 15 years ago. She recognized the danger laced into the calm. Good memories are soft nooses. They tighten without bruising. Mum, Theo murmured when Edward went for water. I feel sorry for her, Poppy. Not because she's innocent, because she looks like someone groping in the dark for something. That isn't a door handle. Amara paused. I understand. But empathy doesn't mean substituting responsibility. She chose. Your father chose. And we decide not to let their choices define us. Right, Theo nodded. What will you say at Claridge's? The truth, Amara said, voice like a splinter withdrawn without pain left. No dramatics, no salt in wounds. I'll let the numbers and images speak. Truth is strong enough without a dance. I'll stand with you, Theo said, hand to chest. In front of everyone, Amara looked at her son and saw the child who had staggered through first, swim in the lake, and the man choosing his own ethics. Warm pride poured into her chest like thick tea. In the sitting room, Edward set a velvet box on the table on Sunday night. For Claridge's night, he flipped it open, a collar of diamonds, glittering like a perfectly polished shackle. Beautiful, Amara said, touching the center stone like a ribbon of stars. You deserve the whole sky, Edward smiled. I want all of London to see how loved you are. Amara looked up. You know, Ed, she let her voice fall lightly, the only thing I want people to see is who's telling the truth. He hesitated half a beat. You're measuring me again? No, Amara closed the box. I measure the world around me, so I know where I stand. That night, Edward fell asleep quickly. Amara lay still, listening to the wind rustle through the birches. She thought, perhaps somewhere in him there was still a genuine part that once knew how to cherish. Then she remembered Cayman, Delaware, Claridge's, Corinthia, and the blonde hair in the envelope. Kindness to the past won't rescue the present. She got up, went to the study, and opened the playbook. New page. Claridge's running order. 2140 opening. 2147. Evidence 1-3. 2150. 3 financials. 2150. 7 shareholder resolution. 22. 2 close. Her pen underscored the last line. No insults, no humiliation, only truth. Before lights out, she added a private line. House repossessed. Monday morning back in London, Amara received an update from Elena. Subject cancelled 2 lunch bookings this week, pattern shift. Recommend keep mask steady. The gambler's instinct in Edward smelled weather. Expected. Amara replied, mask steady. All that day, she worked as if nothing was happening. Call the Beijing team. Sign off on the ESG budget. Confirm seating with Lady Charlotte. Send Rupert his proxy packet. 15 minutes of tea with Graham about modern governance. Each motion clicked into place like simple steps in a dangerous dance. Night fell. Edward came to the doorway. Are you happy, Amara? He asked suddenly, sounding like someone standing at his front door too long without finding the key. The question echoed poppies in Green Park. Amara looked at him, slowly. Yes. She paused a beat. But my happiness no longer depends on whether you choose me. Suddenly, she saw something crack in Edward's eyes. Perhaps the illusion that I love you alone would reset the board like pieces tidied after a lost game. He said nothing. Neither did she, a quiet like the calm before a storm. The next day, Claridge's sent the final confirmation. Seating plan, lights, sound, screen position, and emergency exits. Amara opened the diagram and marked in blue. Lady Charlotte row A left, Graham row B center, Rupert row C right, Sir Malcolm beside Tech, Theo beside Amara. In the margin, she sketched a small arrow from the lectern to the side aisle, a retreat path if needed. When she signed, she felt an odd calm. Calm, not from fearlessness, but because she had scaffolded the fear. She shut the laptop and stepped onto the balcony. London stretched a thin silk fold of sunset. From afar, street brides let fall 7 chimes. Amara closed her eyes and thanked the girl from Peckham who hadn't quit when told, don't dream. That girl hadn't known she'd one day have to unpick another dream of an unbreakable marriage. But that girl had taught Amara how to stand back up. And somewhere across those rooftops, a blonde hair was waiting to become the final piece of evidence, not a symbol of pain, but the period at the end of a chapter, so the next could open with the plum scent of new roses, deep, lasting, never cheap, sweet. Amara went inside. In the mirror, the woman who looked back was not a goddess of vengeance but a caretaker of a house, the truth, and a boy learning to love without kneeling to deceit. My turn, she said softly, to herself, and to a city half asleep. Truth's turn. In London finance circles, Beaumont and Partners' 20th anniversary gala, at Claridge's ballroom, was touted as the spring's grand social event. Silver-foiled invitations went out in embossed envelopes, each with a miniature bottle of champagne and a handwritten note. Raise a glass with us to 2 decades of love and building. Everyone anticipated a glittering evening from the city's golden couple. No one knew it would be a stage for the truth. Amara sat in a sealed Lincoln Inn chamber 3 days before the gala with Sir Malcolm Reeves. Before them lay 4 thick black-bound files with gold-stamped spines. Civil, divorce, civil, asset division, corporate, governance, criminal, fraud. Once you flip the switch at Claridge's, Sir Malcolm said, voice low, there's no way back. Do you want me to file as soon as the screen goes dark? Immediately, Amara nodded. The court opens the docket the next morning. The press will break simultaneously, no window for Edward to maneuver. Have you weighed the fallout? Malcolm asked. Not just for him, your son. Amara set down her pen and met his eyes. I have. That's why I let Theo choose. If he stands beside me, it's his statement. If he prefers to stand apart, I still proceed. But he knows. Truth can't be done by halves. Sir Malcolm sighed, then initialed the file covers. Very well, we prepare. At home, Theo turned the sitting room into a tech hub. 3 laptops stood ready, one to drive the deck, one to monitor Claridge's camera system, and one as a secure backup link. He sketched the stage on a whiteboard projector position, speakers, power runs, and emergency exits. You go up at 21:40, Theo pointed out. Dad will have just finished his speech. I'll be beside you. Plug in the USB. Cue the deck. The main screen mirrors the 4 side screens automatically, and if... Amara hesitated. Your father catches on? I'll block him, Theo said. Sure. I'm not 8 anymore, Mum. Amara saw, in his eyes, pain still unsealed and steel already formed. She set a hand on his shoulder. This is the only time I'll ever ask you to stand against your father. After this, let the law do its work. Amara met Lady Charlotte Whitfield in an orchid-glassed conservatory 2 days before the gala. I'm looking forward to it more than the opera season, Charlotte laughed, lifting her sherry. I've told my tailor to ready the feathered gown. I want a front row to watch Edward fall. It isn't a night for humiliation, Amara reminded her. It's to set the truth in the light. Charlotte nodded, face sobering. I understand. But sometimes light can burn. If there's a fire, Amara said, eyes on the reflecting pool, I'll let it burn the mask, not the person. Amara chose a dress in the dressing room the night before Claridge's. Dozens of couture pieces lined the closet, but she stopped at a black Valentino stitched in gold thread. Black for endings, gold for rebirth. On the table lay the diamond necklace Edward had given her. She looked at it for a long time, then closed the box. Instead, she chose a white pearl strand she'd worn the day they signed their first deal in Canary Wharf. For tomorrow you'll wear... Theo stepped in and halted. Mum, you look like a queen. Amara smiled, settling the pearls. No, I'll be the doorkeeper. Truth is the queen. On the morning of the gala, headlines read, Claridge's readies for Beaumont and Partners' 20th anniversary gala. Guests, heavyweights from the city to Westminster. The media hymned Edward and Amara as a rare, enduring love in a faithless financial world. Amara read and smiled thinly one more day. Elena texted briefly, subject anxious, increased calls to heart. She is silent. Good. Amara replied, proceed. Mask steady. That afternoon, Claridge's events team ran the final checks. Sound boomed clean. Light washed the glass ceiling. White rose sprays blanketed the tables. The manager asked, would you like to test the mic, Mrs. Beaumont? Amara took it. Her voice filled the empty ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. 20 years is long enough to know who truly is who. The manager applauded. Rock-solid voice, Ma'am. Amara smiled, the voice of someone who isn't afraid anymore. That night, when Claridge's lights rose, guests would see the golden couple enter hand in hand, fairy tale perfect. They would not know that in Amara's clutch lay a small USB holding everything, and on her face, the smile would gleam as always, only this time, it would not be a mask. It would be the light, waiting to break. The Claridge's ballroom burned bright like a star hung low over Mayfair. Crystal chandeliers breathed warm light across vast rounds smothered in white roses, glinting off thin-lipped crystal like a classic promise. Outside, cameras strobed. Inside, the jazz was velvet, soft, the laughter thick enough to say safe, and hollow, sufficient to betray the space no one had touched. Amara appeared at the end of the hall. Black Valentino stitched in gold mapped her like a constellation. Not the diamond collar Edward had given her, but a white pearl strand at her throat, the marker of the day they signed their first deal. Theo walked beside her, polished in a tuxedo, his eyes unusually calm. He held his mother's hand as if he were keeping time for his own heart. Mrs. Beaumont, tonight you look. The MC drew breath. Inevitable. Just necessary. Amara smiled. Across the room, Edward entered as if the stage had been made for his entrance. Tom Ford tux, a bright smile, a hand lifted to meet nods and small cheers. He took Amara's hand and kissed her knuckles a beat longer than usual. With the supremely confident, anything longer than usual is a worry in costume. My queen, he said, loud enough for nearby tables. Be a citizen of truth, Amara answered, silk soft. Dinner was opened with seared scallops and moved to a medium beef fillet, with red wine sauce shining on the plate like a small galaxy. Glasses chimed. Lady Charlotte is at A left. Graham is at B center. Rupert is at C right. Sir Malcolm is near Tech. Directly in Amara's eyeline, everything was placed like chessmen awaiting the touch. 9:20 p.m. The band shifted into a slow dance. Edward drew Amara onto the floor. The room oohed. People love live film clips where love seems to win. His hand rested at her back, tapping a private 3-beat code of old, "I love you." She let him tap all 3, then answered not with 3 but with 1. Enough. 9:33 p.m. Edward took the lectern. The mic lit. Applause. He waited for the room to drop into quiet before speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here to witness 20 years of something rare in the city. Love and a firm built on—" He stopped, looked down at Amara. "Integrity." The word integrity left his mouth like a coin tossed at the wrong well. "Amara is my partner in every sense," Edward continued. "She builds when I dream, steadies when I imagine, wins when I will. I want to—" He paused, drew breath. "Propose again tonight." Applause rose, a few soft cheers. Cameras rattled. Edward went to one knee and opened a velvet box, the new ring blazing like a lit doorway. "Amara Okafor Beaumont," he said, voice trembling just enough to scan as sincere. "Will you give me 20 years more?" The room went still, the sweet lay over the ballroom like too much icing on a wedding cake. Amara looked at the ring. She clearly heard that her heart wasn't running, it was counting. "Yes," she said, steady. "I'll give you precisely what you deserve." Applause broke and swelled like surf. Edward slid the ring on and hugged her hard. With his mouth at her ear, Amara whispered for him alone. 9:40. "Stand firm." He drew back and looked at her. In his eyes, a bead of fear sparked like a pin. 9:40 p.m. Amara stepped to the lectern. Theo left the table and moved toward the tech corner like any harmless guest, asking to lower the volume a notch. The USB lay ready in his inside pocket. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amara began. There were no notes. "Thank you for coming to celebrate. 20 years is long enough to build an empire. It's also long enough for cracks to show. Let's look at facts. Tonight, rather than retell stories you've heard, the room listed like a ship changing course. Edward was locked half still in the front row, his smile turning into a grimace. 9:47. Amara glanced at her watch. 20 years ago to this minute. Edward and I said till death. Tonight, I'd like to show a few other moments. She nodded. Theo plugged in and hit play. The lights fell a notch. The main screen and 4 satellites bloomed. Frame 1. Corinthia invoice, day use. Date, month, time, 14/21, 16/31. The hotel logo is sharp as a blade. Frame 2. Corridor photo. Edward is with a blonde woman. A quick kiss. His hand was placed precisely on her back. Frame 3. Exit shot. They laugh. She rests her chin on his shoulder. A murmur spread, and then strangled itself, as if a hand had closed on the room's throat. Visual evidence. Amara's voice was low, not to humiliate, but to anchor memory. "In my memory, that place is the Cotswolds kitchen. Stevie Wonder. Fresh bread. The fact is, the Corinthia." Edward lurched to his feet. He said, "Turn it off," but with no live mic. The words fell like a stone into the carpet. "There's more," Amara said, not looking at him. "Tiffany, £30,000. Harry Winston, £60,000. Cartier, 40. £5,000 items not given in this house." The screens poured out bills, statements, and receipts. Every number shone like heated metal. "Her name is Poppy Hart," Amara said, enunciating without malice. "She's 28 and works in fashion marketing. And, from table 12, a slight figure stood. Poppy. Plain black dress, eyes rimmed red, no heavy makeup, no Chanel bag. She clutched the program, head held just high enough not to break. "Me," Poppy said, softly, but the room's mic nets caught it like a glass chime. "And I am sorry." The room's temperature changed. Not because rivals faced off, but because the subject shifted to accountability. "I've spoken with her," Amara went on. "I won't blacken young women trained to believe being chosen equals happiness. Tonight is not a moral tribunal for women. Tonight is a story about power and responsibility." The slide changed. Clark Innovations Limited appeared. Arrow map. Cayman, Delaware Shoreditch lease. The money trail was drawn like an escape route. "This part is more challenging to swallow than love," Amara said. 70 million moved through offshore structures to hide assets from a marriage shareholders, and taxes. The dossier has been delivered to the authorities. No one in this room is bigger than the law. A wine-soaked "Oh God" burst from the right. Graham leaned forward, arms folded, eyes cold. Sir Malcolm rose, his voice a gavel. Notice: civil and criminal filings have been made. Asset freeze orders are effective immediately. Edward lunged a step. Claridge's security eased into position. Theo stepped half a pace, just enough for his body to intercept his father's eyes. "Son," Edward rasped, voice collapsing. "Sit down, Edward." Theo said, "No, Dad. Listen, the way so many others have had to listen to you." The whispering swallowed the jazz. Lady Charlotte straightened, pearls flashing. "I move. We vote now to remove Mr. Edward Beaumont as CEO and chair of Beaumont and Partners for gross breaches of governance ethics and endangering the firm's financial safety." "Seconded," Graham said. "Clear." "Third," Rupert added, cool as aged wine. "Vote," Sir Malcolm declared, raising his hand, scanning, hands first, then proxy confirmation. Hands lifted like antennae catching a new frequency. Charlotte, Graham, Rupert, 3 minor holders, Amara. The secretary hurried the count. Proxies slid from pockets, paper rustling like dry rain. 63% in favor, Sir Malcolm read. Motion carries. The sound that fell wasn't quite an object. It was a coordinate system dropping off the shoulders of a man everyone thought they knew. Edward sagged against the chair, eyes vacant, mouth ajar like someone almost remembering his name. Amara looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "I am not here to rub salt into anyone's skin. I'm here because my son deserves to see adults face consequences, and the women in this room deserve a message. We do not have to be silent to be loved. We do not have to shrink so others look larger." She slipped off the ring, the new one Edward had just pushed on and the old one. She dropped them into the champagne flute before him. Bubbles rose and knotted around the metal like confused little fish. "Keep them," Amara said. "Pass them on to whoever needs props." A bitter, relieved laugh cracked at a back table. Amara lifted a hand to cut it. She would not let mockery eclipse fact. "Edward," she said plainly, "you were yesterday's good man. Today, you are the result of your choices. Tomorrow, you will be a lesson. I hope you choose a good one." Poppy tightened her grip on the program, took a half step toward the mic, and stopped. She looked at Amara, only looked. In it were gratitude, shame, and a small promise. "I won't repeat this. Theo," Amara turned to her son, "do you want to speak?" Theo looked around the room at men toggling between posture and defense. He did not look at his father. He looked at the other men. "I choose my mother," he said, clearly. "But tonight isn't Mum or Dad. It's what I decide is right. I keep what I learned from my father: discipline, ambition, the ability to read a room. What he did wrong, I return to him." The silence was so complete you could hear stone against stone in the vases. Edward panted. The veins stood in his gripping hand. "Amara," he husked, "I love you." "You love the feeling of being loved," Amara said gently. "I love reality. Reality says, these are the consequences." She met Sir Malcolm's eyes. He nodded. The main doors swung open. 2 security men stood courteously close. No one escorted. Edward stood up on his own. The first step was like missing a step. The second, harder. At the third, he glanced back not at Amara, but at Theo. Theo neither nodded nor shook his head. He set a hand over his heart and held firm. The doors closed behind Edward. No applause. Amara had chosen this from the start. Tonight was not a celebration of wreckage. It was a surgery. She turned back to the mic. "Second motion. Rename the firm to Okafor and Partners, a commitment that this empire belongs not to a man, but to the values that make it worth existing." "Seconded," Charlotte said, not hiding her delight. "Vote," Sir Malcolm. Hands up. Proxy passed. Carried. The band did not resume at once. Amara nodded the mic to the MC, then walked down through looks, shock, pity, respect, thanks. Graham met her halfway and tipped his head. "Clean surgery, no gore, perfect. Thank you for your trust," Amara said. Lady Charlotte reached her, and planted a dry kiss on her cheek. Brava. Then, low. And if needed, I have another 3%. Amara smiled. We need nothing tonight but air. Poppy waited at the room's edge. When Amara reached her, she opened her mouth, but Amara lifted a hand. No need. Amara took a card from her clutch, an address for a women's health clinic, with a note. Get checked. If it's hard, call this number. Poppy took it, eyes blurring, and nodded. Not forgiveness, just a rope thrown to someone relearning how to swim. Theo squeezed his mother's hand. He smiled the first light smile since the telephoto day. Done, Mum? He asked softly. Half done, Amara said. The other half belongs to the court and time. Music returned, not soft jazz but a clipped Bach suite. No one danced. The air wasn't somber. It sat in a third between dark and bright. The quiet after a blade has been withdrawn, before the cut begins to seal. Under the crystals, Amara's pearls didn't blaze like diamonds. They held, even, durable, exact. She headed for the side doors and breathed deep. Outside, the night in London was cool and sharp, with near rain. Her phone buzzed. Sir Malcolm. Court has acknowledged filings. 9 a.m., first hearing. Press is circling. I'll hold until you're ready. Another, from Alina. Subject left side entrance. Press spotted. Brace. Amara pocketed the phone. She did not look back into the ballroom. Tonight required no backward glance. She, Theo, and the truth were in front. Let's go home, son, she said. Home, Theo repeated, and the word had no glass this time. They entered the night, where a new chapter waited to be written in the ink of composure. Hours later, the whole city was talking about Claridge's. But in the Chelsea kitchen, Amara brewed mint tea and cut 3 slices of lemon cake from the fridge. Theo sat at the table, arms around a tangle of cables and USBs like a fisherman hugging the day's catch. They didn't turn on the TV. Are you scared? Amara asked, pouring. Yes, Theo said honestly, but less than when you were pretending to be happy. The truth is big, but it stands still. Lies are small, but they run non-stop. Exactly, Amara smiled. I'm tired of chasing small things. A soft, quiet, no applause, no photos. Only the warmth of a kettle and the smell of sugared lemon. Tomorrow will be loud, Theo said. Amara nodded. We'll let the law speak for us, and we'll work as usual. She rose and took an envelope from the cupboard. The blonde hair. She set it on the table beside the Corinthia photos, the receipts, and the flow diagram. She drew a fine line. USED. Then, I clipped it at the back of the file, not to scorn the past, but to close a cover. Sleep, son, she said. Will you sleep with me tonight? Theo grinned. Like when I was 7, you lay on the edge listening to me breathe after that fever. Yes, tonight I'll stand guard over your dreams, Amara said. Lights out. London kept talking, but in this house, quiet was chosen. A general laid her sword beside the bed, not because the war was over, but because victory had changed shape, from stabbing to planting. A small plum rose on the sill brought from the Cotswolds had just set a bud. Not cheap sweet, deep, enduring, in season. By the next morning, the press was saturated with Claridge's. Red headlines ran across front pages. Shock at 20th anniversary gala. Amara Beaumont exposes husband's affair and financial fraud. Beaumont, partners Amara Okafor, partners. A new queen of the city rises from the ashes. Reporters camped outside the house. Phones rang non-stop. Emails piled up. Sir Malcolm texted, Say nothing. Let the law and the media make their waves. You only need to stand firm. Amara drew the curtains and looked out a forest of cameras, eager eyes. Inside, the air was calm. At the kitchen table, Theo ate toast with dark circles under his eyes, but brighter than ever. Did you sleep? Amara asked. I've never slept so deeply, Theo smiled. The first time, I didn't dream that everything was collapsing. Amara smiled and poured mint tea. This was the victory. Her son, learning that truth even when it hurts, lets you sleep in peace. At 9 a.m., the court opened the preliminary hearing. Inside, the atmosphere was as heavy as an operating theatre. Sir Malcolm stood and laid out the file. infidelity, asset concealment, fraud. Plaintiff, Amara Okafor Beaumont. Defendant, absent, Edward Beaumont. His lawyer tried, a private family matter, no need for public exposure. The judge, a silver-haired woman in round glasses, struck her gavel. When he hid £70 million from the tax authority and shareholders, this ceased to be a family matter. This is financial crime. One bang. Interim order. Joint assets frozen. Edward barred from company accounts. Passport seized. The press erupted just outside the courtroom doors. That afternoon, Amara walked into the 40th floor office. Hallways that once tilted toward Edward drew breath and leaned toward her. Staff stood, silent, eyes following. Amara stopped, looked around, and spoke so that it carried, "From today, this firm is Okafor and Partners. We will invest in assets and values, transparency, responsibility, and opportunity for those left behind." Applause cracked like thunder. Amelia, the assistant who used to tremble in Edward's shadow, began to cry. Graham nodded, respect clear in his eyes. Lady Charlotte sent purple orchids with a card. "Brava, darling. And remember, I have another 3% if needed." In the months after, the city wouldn't stop talking about the Claridge's coup. Some called it an overexposed family tragedy. Most made Amara a symbol. Editorials wrote, "In a world where women are told be silent to keep, Amara chose speak to keep your dignity." A revolution waged not with slogans, but with data, invoices, and the truth. Amara gave no interviews. She appeared once in the Financial Times, saying only, "I didn't destroy a marriage. I refused to let lies define it." And Edward. He was prosecuted and sentenced to 3 years for financial fraud. When he got out, he moved to a small apartment in Miami and tried to start again, but the word Claridge's followed like a ghost. Tabloids sometimes ran photos of him shopping alone, hair grey, shirt wrinkled. To Amara, he was only an old story. Poppy Hart? She left London and completed a master's in Manchester. Occasionally, she sent Amara hand-drawn postcards. A field, a cup of coffee, a few shaky lines. "Thank you for throwing me a rope. I'm learning to swim again." 5 years later, on a June morning in the Cotswolds, Amara sat in the garden. The plum David Austin roses were in full bloom, deep, enduring, never cheap sweet. On the table lay a wedding invitation, Theo Beaumont Okafor to wed Layla Khan, a young, earnest lawyer. Theo came out tall, a light sat beside his mother, and took her hand. "Mum," he whispered, "I chose right. No one's perfect. But Layla, she's honest. I can breathe with her." Amara smiled, eyes bright. "Then you've learned the most important thing. Love doesn't need a stage, only the truth." When Amara walked her son down the aisle at the ceremony, applause rose like surf. She wore sea green, no glittering jewels, only the old pearl Strand. People murmured, "That's the city's queen, the one who was reborn from the Claridge's night." As the music swelled, Amara looked around. No Edward, only Theo's smile, Layla's joyful tears, and the scent of plum roses threaded the air. She knew. The revenge story had closed. This was no longer a battle. This was a new life. A queen, not the queen of Claridge's night, but the queen of rebirth.